Hey guys, my name is Ayo. I'm a home finance and lifestyle creator, and in case you're new here, about a year ago I completed on my first property in the Kent and London area. Today begins the series of a home buying 101 where I want to talk to people about the basics and understanding that is required to purchase a first property. And today we're going to be talking about how to know how much you can afford when it comes to buying your first house. So let's get started. So on a basic level, in order to know what properties you can afford, it's important to know the equation for how to buy a house. Typically, it's deposit plus mortgage equals house price. And the deposit will typically be a percentage of the house price. When we're looking at examples like today, let's look at my house. My house was £325,000, and a typical deposit that is required to buy a house would be 10%. 10% of £325,000 is £32,500, and then the mortgage needs to basically bridge that gap. So £325,000 minus £32,500 would equal £292,500, and that would equate to the purchase price of the house basically. So it's really important to understand that, because then you will know what deposit you need to arrange and save for, and you'll know what mortgage you need to have in order to afford whatever type of house that you require. And sometimes you can adjust that, so you can adjust your affordability or just certain things so that you know that you can afford a specific type of house. So we know that deposit plus mortgage equals house price, but how do we know if we can afford the mortgage that the bank is going to give us, or the mortgage that's required for a specific type of house? This is a question that you can also answer and have in mind so that you can know how much you can afford. For example, using the example that we're giving of my house, you might tell yourself, okay, yeah, I will be able to try and save £32,500 for this house, but how do I know if the bank is going to give me £292,500 that's required for the mortgage? Well, the most basic level in which you can do to try and see if you might be able to afford it is to times your salary or your whole income by 4.5, and that's typically like the average that they say that a bank is likely to lend you. Using me as an example, at the time at which I wanted to buy my house, I was earning about £41,000. If I times that by 4.5, I get £184,500, which means I'm not likely to be able to afford a mortgage that is required up to the cost of the house. I need £292,500. I'm not even getting £192,500. So it means that I'm gonna have to adjust the type of house that I'm gonna be looking into. Maybe I need to adjust it by £100,000. I'm only likely to be able to afford something a bit lower. Another way you can do it to know how much you can afford is actually to go online and look at mortgage affordability calculators to give you a sort of rough idea of how much a bank is going to lend you. So let's go down to my laptop and see what sort of mortgage affordability calculators you can check out. So I've gone online and just searched mortgage affordability calculator, and I've been able to get onto this website called Money Helper, which looks like it's backed by the HM government and Money and Pensions Advice Service. So that should be able to give me about a good idea of how much of a mortgage I can afford. So what it typically gets you to do is to put in your annual income. So like I said, I've put in 41,000 as my annual income, salary before tax. I took a look at my previous paycheck and I earned about 2,400 per month. So that's what I'm going to put here as my take-home pay. Any other income, not at the moment, so this is my only income. And this is another reason why I tell people that getting a second income might be helpful for you to be able to afford a house. And then let's go on to the next. It's asking me about my monthly household costs, and this is another factor that can affect your affordability. So here it's asking me about credit card and loan payments, child and spousal maintenance, childcare and school fees, travel costs, bills and insurance. It's all stuff that could affect your affordability and your mortgage and what the bank is going to consider for you when they want to give you a mortgage. So in terms of credit card and loan payments, I'm going to put it down to 0. Child and spousal maintenance, I'm not going to put anything there. Childcare and school fees, I don't have that. Travel costs, maybe let's put that to 100, although at the moment we're working from home, so maybe that might not be the case. Bills and insurance, I've just put a roundabout figure of 150 here. Current rent or mortgage payment, if you're living at home, you don't have to put anything there. Or if you are renting, it might be a good idea to put that there to, just give a real roundabout cost of what you're dealing with at the moment. And other estimated monthly living costs, personally for me, I'll just put 0 here. Holidays, I'll put about 50 per month, and food, groceries and toiletries, I'll put a 75 per month, just as roundabout figures. And then you can click here and find out how much you can borrow. So on this mortgage affordability calculator, it's telling me that I might be offered between 114,800 and 172,200. So that's typically what they think that I might be able to afford. And this is based on a mortgage term of 25. If I were to increase this to 35, I wonder if that would change things slightly, because that's actually my mortgage repayment at the moment. Interest rate of 3, and it's telling me that my mortgage repayments per month will be approximately £552.26. So this will give you a real good breakdown of basically how much of a mortgage you're likely to be able to afford and what your take-home pay would be, or what sort of money you'd have left over after you have to pay your mortgage repayments and your essential costs. So this is a really good website that you can check out, and I'll make sure to put it down in the description box so that you can also take a look at what mortgage you'll be able to afford. So you can do the basic level of 4.5 times your salary, or you can look into mortgage affordability calculators on Google, which will be able to give you a bit more of a better figure as to what the banks are likely to lend you. So as we saw when we were doing the mortgage affordability calculator, there are things that the bank is going to consider when assessing your affordability as well. So even if you do your basic sort of equation that I mentioned of timesing your salary by 4.5, there are things that may actually reduce the mortgage that you're likely to be given by a bank. Things such as children or dependents, or debt, things that you may have on finance. These are all monthly repayments or things that affect how much money you are able to actually give towards a mortgage repayment, and the bank is going to consider that as well. So as much as you can do that basic level, definitely make sure you try and take a look at mortgage affordability calculators, because they'll be able to give you a bit more of a better idea of what the banks are going to consider when they assess your mortgage application and how much they're likely to lend you as well. So now we have an idea of what mortgage we're likely to get. That's given us a good idea of what we can afford, and we can adjust the cost of our house prices accordingly. However, there are things that may allow you to actually get on the property ladder, even if, like in my example, my salary isn't able to give me a good price of a mortgage to afford this flat. There are other things that may be available to you in order to increase your affordability. So in my example, I actually used the Help to Buy equity loan, which heavily increased my affordability of this flat. And it's quite interesting because I was recently actually on the BBC Radio 4 talking about how hard it is to get on the property ladder. And there's a certain conception that with the Help to Buy equity loan, you could have afforded the property without the Help to Buy equity loan. But as you can see from my example, there was no way I would be able to afford £325,000 property with my salary alone and the deposit that I had. So things like government schemes, things like Help to Buy equity loan, shared ownership, and even 95% mortgage guarantee, things like that are able to increase your affordability. Because, for example, you may have just done what I've done, gone into the mortgage affordability calculator, thought about what deposit you're going to be able to raise, and it might be looking kind of grim. You might feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to afford a house for however many years. However, government schemes can heavily increase your affordability, and I'm going to show you some real life numbers of how I was able to afford my property with the Help to Buy equity scheme. So let's look at the numbers in my case and how the Help to Buy equity loan was actually able to allow me to afford this property. With the Help to Buy equity loan, I am going to do a dedicated video on this, but just to give you a basic overview, the government can give you an equity loan of up to 20% in the whole of the UK, or 40% if you're in London, towards the purchase price of your property. So if we look at, in my case, I used the maximum amount I could use, 40%, in order to afford this property. So 40% of £325,000 is £130,000. So the government essentially gave me a loan of £130,000 towards the purchase of my property, and that gives me about £195,000 left I need to either raise a deposit for or raise a mortgage for. So as you can see, that heavily decreases how much I need to raise for a deposit and how much of a mortgage I need to raise. Now in the case of my bank was able to lend me £172,800. So with £130,000 given by the government and a mortgage of £172,800, I needed to raise a deposit of £22,200 £200 in order to get to the cost of my house. So if we're looking at that equation that we were looking at earlier in terms of mortgage plus deposit equals cost of price, I was able to get equity loan plus deposit plus mortgage equals cost of house, and that's how I was able to afford this property. What I would say is that government schemes can be very helpful for increasing your affordability, and depending on the timeline of when you want to buy your property, it might be worth looking into them. If we were to use these same numbers in a shared ownership example, shared ownership is basically where you're able to just purchase a part of your home and then pay rent on the rest of it. If you were to use like my flat as an example of that as well, it's basically as if I purchased 60% of my property, which would be £195,000, and then basically it's the housing association or whoever owns the property would then ask me to pay rent on the 40% that I haven't been able to purchase. So in that sense, you are able to increase your affordability. I did have a preference for the Help to Buy equity loan because technically the property is still mine and I can pay off the equity loan as opposed to me having to pay rent on that percentage. But yeah, I think that's a way that government schemes can increase your affordability. So if, for example, you've looked at the deposit that you're able to raise and the mortgage that you're likely to get, and you feel like you're not able to afford a property in your area or the area that you're looking to, it might be worth looking at the government schemes and just doing your research to check whether the pros and cons work for you. But like I said, a dedicated video is coming soon. I will make sure to link it up here. But yeah, that's the best way that you can figure out how you can afford your property or the property of your dreams. So we've gone over the ways in which you can figure out what house prices you can afford. If you realize that you may need to increase your deposit amount, definitely check out this video where I give tips on how to save for a deposit. Or if you feel like you need more tips on how to prepare for your home purchase, definitely check out this video where I go through all the different steps in which you can prepare for your first home. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.